The date was May 28, 2025. It began like any other late spring day in the Swiss Alps. The air was likely crisp. The towering peaks, usually a symbol of steadfast permanence, held a silent, growing threat. High above the picturesque village of Blatten, a glacier was becoming increasingly unstable. Then, with a terrifying roar that echoed through the valleys, a massive section of it gave way. Ice, rock, and mud, a colossal destructive force, thundered down the mountainside. It was a scene of unimaginable power, a raw display of nature's fury when pushed beyond its limits. The mountain, it seemed, was shedding its frozen skin. The immediate impact on Blatten was catastrophic. The village, nestled in what was once a seemingly safe haven, was directly in the path of this immense flow. Homes, streets, and generations of history were engulfed in moments. What had been a vibrant community was suddenly transformed into a desolate landscape of debris. The sheer volume of material that descended was overwhelming, burying everything beneath a thick, chilling blanket. The silence that followed the deafening crash must have been profound, a stark contrast to the violence of the collapse itself, marking an abrupt and brutal end to the village as its inhabitants knew it. News of the disaster spread quickly, sending shockwaves far beyond the Swiss borders. Authorities reported one person missing, a terrifying statistic that underscored the human cost of such an event, even with prior warnings. For the residents, this was more than just a geological event. It was the obliteration of their homes, their memories, and their sense of security. The familiar contours of their daily lives were erased, replaced by a scene of utter devastation. The very mountains that had defined their existence had turned against them, a betrayal forged in a warming world. The initial hours were filled with uncertainty and a desperate search for information. While the absence of widespread casualties was a small mercy, the psychological toll was immense. Imagine watching your entire world disappear under a tide of ice and rock. The scale of the destruction was difficult to comprehend, even for those who witnessed it. Blatten, a name once synonymous with alpine charm, became a symbol of nature's immense power and, increasingly, a stark reminder of the planet's precarious state. The event signaled a new, unsettling chapter in the relationship between humanity and the high mountains. The tragedy, devastating as it was, could have been far worse. Geologists, a watchful group who monitor the Earth's subtle and not-so-subtle shifts, had been sounding the alarm for days. They had observed the telltale signs of an unstable glacier high above Blatten. The mountain was groaning, shifting, signaling its impending breakdown. These scientists understood that the weight of overlying rocks was putting immense pressure on the ice, a situation exacerbated by changing climatic conditions. Their warnings were not abstract academic pronouncements, but urgent calls to action, born from an understanding of the powerful forces at play. Fortunately, these warnings were heeded. The residents of Blatten, though undoubtedly reluctant to leave their homes, were evacuated days before the glacier finally broke apart. This crucial decision by the authorities, based on scientific advice, undoubtedly saved many lives. It speaks to a growing, albeit sometimes slow, recognition of the increasing risks in mountain environments. The evacuation itself must have been a period of immense anxiety for the villagers, a forced departure from the familiar, with the looming threat of what might happen to their homes and community. This foresight, however, did not lessen the eventual sorrow of the loss. The sheer scale of the collapse is difficult to fully grasp. Approximately 3 million cubic meters of ice, rock, and mud cascaded down. To put this into perspective, imagine a solid block of material stretching for kilometers, deep enough to swallow buildings whole. This was not a minor landslide. It was a monumental event, reshaping the very landscape. The force of such a mass moving at speed is almost unimaginable, capable of pulverizing anything in its path. The glacier didn't just slide, it disintegrated, unleashing a torrent of debris that redefined the valley floor almost instantaneously. The technical cause, the glacier breaking up under the weight of overlying rocks, points to a complex interplay of geological and climatic factors. As temperatures rise, permafrost, the permanently frozen ground that acts like glue holding mountain slopes together, begins to thaw. This thawing destabilizes rock faces, making them more prone to collapse onto glaciers below. The glaciers themselves are also retreating and thinning due to warmer temperatures, making them less able to support such rockfalls and more susceptible to breaking apart. Blatten's fate was sealed by these interconnected vulnerabilities. The emotional devastation was perhaps best captured by the mayor of Blatten. His words, stark and filled with sorrow, resonated deeply. "We have lost our village." This wasn't just an observation about physical structures. It was a lament for a lost way of life, for a community shattered, for a sense of place that had vanished under millions of tons of debris. Such a statement carries the weight of countless memories, shared experiences, and the collective identity of the people who called Blatten home. It's a testament to the profound connection between people and their environment, a connection brutally severed. For the evacuated residents, the news, though perhaps anticipated with dread, was still a crushing blow. To know that your home, your belongings, everything you've built and cherished no longer exists, is a trauma of immense proportions. The relief of personal safety would inevitably be mixed with profound grief and uncertainty about the future. Where would they go? Could their community ever be rebuilt? Or was Blatten now a permanent scar on the landscape, a ghost village buried under the mountain's refuse? These are questions that will haunt them for years to come. The collapse of the Blatten Glacier is not an isolated incident. It is a dramatic, highly visible symptom of a much larger global problem: climate change. Reader comments on news articles about the event quickly focused on this underlying cause. Rising global temperatures are accelerating the melting of glaciers and permafrost worldwide. This isn't a future threat, it is happening now, with increasingly destructive consequences. The Alps, like other mountain ranges, are on the front lines of this crisis, experiencing warming at a rate higher than the global average, making their stunning landscapes increasingly fragile. The connection between a warming planet and events like the Blatten collapse is undeniable to most scientists. Warmer air melts ice directly. It also leads to more liquid water seeping into crevasses and bedrock, which can then freeze and expand, further destabilizing rock and ice structures. The overlying rocks that triggered the Blatten event were likely loosened by these very processes. What happened in Blatten is a clear, tragic illustration of how systemic environmental changes can manifest as localized disasters, altering lives and landscapes irrevocably. The mountains are speaking, and their message is dire. The story of Blatten serves as a chilling echo, a warning amplified by the falling ice and rock. It highlights the urgent need to address the root causes of such disasters, primarily the relentless warming of our planet driven by human activity. While geological events have always shaped our world, the frequency and intensity of climate-related hazards are increasing. The stability of entire ecosystems, from mountain heights to coastal plains, is being undermined. Ignoring these warnings is no longer an option, as the cost, measured in lives, livelihoods, and lost heritage, is becoming too high to bear. Preventing every single such event in the future is likely impossible, given the momentum of current climate change. Mountain environments are inherently dynamic and will continue to present hazards. However, we can significantly mitigate the risks. This involves a multi-pronged approach, investing heavily in scientific monitoring of vulnerable areas, developing more sophisticated early warning systems, and crucially, implementing robust land use planning that avoids placing communities in the direct path of predictable dangers. It also means listening to and acting upon the advice of experts who understand these complex systems. The most fundamental action, however, lies in tackling climate change at its source. This means a rapid and sustained global effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, transition to renewable energy sources, and adopt more sustainable land management practices. Every fraction of a degree of warming avoided lessens the risk of future Blatten-like tragedies. It's about protecting not just remote mountain villages, but communities everywhere that are vulnerable to the escalating impacts of a destabilized climate system. The fate of Blatten is intrinsically linked to global policy decisions made far from its alpine slopes. There can be a hopeful note, but it requires concerted effort and a profound shift in our relationship with the natural world. By embracing better environmental practices, by fostering a deeper understanding of Earth's systems, and by acting collectively to heal our planet, we can strive to prevent such devastating losses. The memory of Blatten should serve not just as a testament to loss, but as a catalyst for change. Perhaps by learning from this tragedy, we can work towards a future where communities can coexist more safely with the magnificent, yet increasingly fragile environments that surround them. ensuring fewer mountains have to weep for lost villages.